That night, the city of Thienvu was swallowed by flames. An old apartment building suddenly exploded, each floor collapsing like falling dominoes. Rescue sirens screamed through the thick black smoke. 9. Civilians ran in panic, scattering in every direction, while rescue workers rushed straight into the burning building. In the middle of that chaos was Lam Ka, an ordinary rescue worker, struggling to pull a small child out of a collapsing hallway. The ceiling trembled violently. Chunks of concrete began raining down. "Sir, are we going to make it out?" the child asked, trembling. Lam Ka didn't answer. He only tightened his grip on the child's hand and ran. But before they could reach the emergency stairwell, boom, a thunderous crash echoed through the building. The entire floor collapsed. In the final moment, Lam Ka managed to shove the child forward before darkness swallowed everything. When he opened his eyes again, the rubble was gone. Floating in front of him was a strange window of light hanging in midair. Cold lines of text appeared across it. "Rescue system activated. Mission: save the lives you have lost." Before Lam Ka could even understand what was happening, a loud explosion sounded behind him. He turned around. The apartment building was burning fiercely. But what froze him in place was this. Lam Ka stood frozen in the smoke-filled hallway. The sharp smell of burning plastic, the sound of shattering glass, and the distant cries for help from the lower floors. All of it felt terrifyingly familiar. He looked down at his hands. No blood. No injuries. Yet the memory of the building collapsing was still vivid, as if it had just happened. "That's impossible," Lam Ka muttered. He remembered that night clearly, the Ha Min apartment disaster, the largest fire in the history of Thienvu City. Dozens of people had died. It was also the tragedy that had haunted him throughout his years as a rescue worker. At that moment, the glowing window appeared in front of him again. "Rescue system active." More lines of text appeared. "Objective: change the outcome of the disaster. First mission: save 3 lives inside the building. Time remaining 17 minutes. Lam Ka's heart pounded. If this really was the past, then the people he failed to save before were still alive. But another warning line immediately appeared. "Warning. If the mission fails, the user will be erased from the timeline." Lam Ka swallowed hard. He didn't understand why he had returned here. He didn't understand what this so-called system was. But one thing he knew for certain. Last time, he had arrived too late. This time, he had a chance to do it over. Lam Ka stood still for a few seconds, his heart pounding as he stared at the countdown blinking in front of his eyes. 16 minutes 48 seconds. A cry for help echoed from the stairwell to the left, snapping him out of his confusion. Whether this was the past or some strange illusion, his instincts as a rescue worker wouldn't allow him to stand still. "All right. If this is a second chance, I'm not going to waste it." Lam Ka rushed into the smoke-filled hallway. At that moment, the system panel appeared again, displaying strange data, temperature levels, building structure, and the locations of surviving lives. A glowing dot blinked in the last room at the end of the corridor. He kicked the jammed door open. Inside, 2 children were huddled in the corner, their faces covered in tears. "I'm here now, don't be afraid." Lam Ka quickly lifted one child into his arms, grabbed the other by the hand, and ran out. The moment they left the room, the ceiling behind them collapsed with a deafening crash. The system panel immediately lit up. "Lives saved 2/3. Reward, Level 1, Physical Enhancement." A surge of warmth rushed through Lam Ka's body, making him feel lighter and stronger. But he didn't have time to breathe a sigh of relief. A loud explosion erupted from the floor above, and the system displayed another alert. "Final life trapped. Floor 6. Lam Ka looked up at the stairwell engulfed in flames. Then, without hesitation, he charged straight upward. Lam Ka rushed up the stairwell, now blazing with fire. Thick black smoke filled the air, reducing visibility to nearly zero. But the system panel still displayed a single glowing dot on the 6th floor, the final life. He gritted his teeth and kept climbing. Each step burned beneath his feet while the sound of bending metal screeched throughout the hallway. Just as he reached the 6th floor, a massive explosion shook the entire building. The door to the last apartment in the corridor was locked from the inside. Lam Ka gathered all his strength and kicked it. The door burst open. Inside, an elderly man lay unconscious near the window. Lam Ka quickly lifted him up and dragged him toward the exit. But the moment he turned around, the system suddenly flashed a blinding red warning. "Warning: abnormal energy detected." A strange symbol appeared on the building's map, something that had never existed in his memories. In the basement, a dark mass was spreading like a pit swallowing the light. Strange data began appearing one after another. Origin unknown, danger level extremely high. Lam Ka froze. This fire wasn't just an accident. At that moment, from deep within the basement came a low rumbling growl like something awakening after a very long sleep. The system displayed a cold line of text. "World-level event activated." And for the first time, Lam Ka realized he wasn't just saving people. Lam Ka froze in the hallway on the 6th floor, his heart pounding as he stared at the flashing red warning in front of him. "World-level event. The words sent a chill down his spine. Meanwhile, the building continued to burn fiercely. Pieces of the ceiling kept falling, and the thick smoke made every breath feel heavier. The elderly man over his shoulder was still unconscious. No. I have to get him out first. Lam Ka forced himself to stay calm and rushed toward the stairwell. But just as he reached the third floor, the entire building shook violently. Boom. An explosion erupted from the basement. Immediately the system began issuing a series of warnings. Spatial gate opening. Unidentified creature emerging. Lam Ka barely had time to process what was happening when a long twisted black hand suddenly pierced through the floor below. A horrifying roar echoed upward. A massive creature with glowing red eyes began crawling out of the darkness. Lam Ka stood there stunned. He was just a rescue worker. He had no weapons, no combat experience. And what stood before him now wasn't just a fire. It was a monster straight out of a nightmare. The system coldly displayed another message. User survival probability 7%. For the first time since returning to the past, Lam Ka felt real fear, because he was beginning to realize he might have stepped into a battle far beyond his abilities. The massive creature crawled up from the basement like a living nightmare. Its body was pitch black with magma-like red veins running across its flesh, and its eyes burned through the thick smoke. Lam Ka stood there nearly frozen. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But behind him was the elderly man still lying unconscious over his shoulder. He couldn't leave him behind. Damn it. Lam Ka tried to drag the man down the stairs. But the creature had already noticed them. It roared, sweeping a gigantic arm across the hallway. Boom. The wall exploded. The shockwave hurled Lam Ka to the floor. The old man slipped from his shoulder and rolled several meters away. Large chunks of the ceiling began collapsing. The system started issuing constant warnings. User critically injured. Building structure nearing total collapse. Lam Ka struggled to stand, but his legs trembled. Blood streamed down his forehead, blurring his vision. The creature slowly approached. Each step made the floor tremble. The system panel displayed one final line. Survival probability 1%. Lam Ka looked around. Fire raged everywhere. The exits were blocked. The man he needed to save lay motionless a few meters away. This time, there was no miracle left. He clenched his fist and gave a bitter smile. Maybe he was destined to fail again, just like last time. The massive creature advanced slowly toward Lam Ka. Each of its steps made the floor tremble like an earthquake. Heat radiated from its body, warping the air around it. Lam Ka lay among the rubble, breathing heavily. Blood streamed into his eyes, blurring his vision. A few meters away, the elderly man he had rescued still lay motionless. The system interface flickered again, its light faint as if it were about to shut down. System shutdown imminent. But then a new notification appeared. Hidden reward activated. Lam Ka froze. Suddenly images flooded into his mind. The two children he had saved were outside the building, clinging to each other and crying. Other rescue workers were pulling them farther away from the flames. Their eyes were fixed on the burning building, filled with worry and hope. One final line of text appeared. Lives saved 3. Reward memory of hope. A surge of burning energy rushed through Lam Ka's body. In that moment, he understood. He hadn't returned to the past just to fight monsters. He had come back to save people. Lam Ka clenched his fists and forced himself to stand even as his legs trembled. He stared directly at the creature before him, not with the eyes of a warrior, but with the eyes of someone who would never leave anyone behind. Lam Ka forced himself to stand in the middle of the inferno. Black smoke swirled around him while chunks of concrete continued to fall from the cracked ceiling above. In front of him, the gigantical monster roared violently. Its glowing red eyes locked onto him, ready to deliver the final blow. But this time, Lam Ka didn't step back. He looked at the system panel flickering weakly before his eyes. Lives saved 3. Emergency mode activated. One final option appeared. Close spatial gate. Consume all remaining system energy. Lam Ka knew exactly what that meant. If he activated it, he could stop the creature. But the system, his only chance to change the past, would disappear forever. He tightened his fist. Then he smiled softly. As long as everyone gets to live, that's enough. Lam Ka charged straight toward the monster. The moment the creature swung its massive arm down, a pillar of white light erupted from the basement, engulfing the entire building. The monster let out one final roar before being dragged back into the spatial gate as it sealed shut. Then, everything went silent. The flames slowly died out. Hours later, rescue teams found Lam Ka leaning against a collapsed wall, exhausted but still alive. Before disappearing completely, the system displayed one final line. Mission complete, the world has been saved. And if you also think Lam Ka truly deserves to be called a hero, drop a 1 inch the comments below.